Eric Messersmith here. Everybody settled down with a review of the first 2 days of the Democratic Convention, which I'll get to in a minute. But first, I wanted to talk about potentially even bigger political news, which is the fact that RFK Jr. may apparently drop out of the race and team with and endorse Donald Trump in exchange for a cabinet position or some type of high-level position in the Trump administration. Nicole Shanahan, his vice presidential candidate, was on Fox News yesterday, also on some podcasts, saying that basically they're considering doing just that, either staying in the race or dropping out and endorsing Trump. Look, this is not surprising. I've been saying for a long time that if you've been following the evolution, shall we say, of RFK Jr. over the course of this campaign, starting from when he ran way back last year as a Democrat to now, it's clear that he has a problem with the Democratic establishment and they have a big problem with him, which is why they've been trying to keep him off the ballots in a lot of states. But also, he just, in this modern political climate, you see he just is kind of closer to Trump than he is to the Democrats. You see it in the media that he goes on, in some of the, I would say, conspiracy theories that he advances. There was a period where he downplayed January 6th. All of it kind of fits together. Look, the RFK people I know are going to come at me. They usually do, and that's fine. But if this happens, and I think it almost certainly will. I mean, when this comes out publicly and your vice presidential candidate says it, I think it's pretty clear it's going to happen. It's not surprising. It's a little disappointing. I know politics is a cynical game, but this is the same guy, RFK Jr., that ran a campaign basically saying, he was above the political fray. The Republicans and Democrats were so polarized that he was a man, that was about integrity, that was above this political back and forth. And there was a report in the Washington Post last week that he went to the Harris campaign through intermediaries and tried to reach out to her to give her an endorsement in exchange for a position in her administration. And the Harris campaign basically said, hell no, get out of here. And now it appears he's turning to Trump. Look, I get it. That's how politics works. If I were him, I might do the same thing. He's 70 years old. This gives him, he's obviously not going to win the presidential race. This gives him a chance to serve in government in some capacity potentially. So from that perspective, it makes sense. But look, can we at least admit it's kind of cynical if that Washington Post story is true, which I believe it probably was, and he reached out to Harris and that was rebuffed, and now he's reaching out to Trump, a guy that, by the way, and Charlie and I talked about this on our last episode, in the New Yorker profile of him that came out a few weeks ago, he called Trump, among other things, apparently in text messages, this is according to that report, a sociopath and barely human, among other things. And now, apparently, is, again, I think pretty likely to join forces with him to try to win, help him win this election in exchange for a position for himself. So again, there's nothing illegal about it. There's probably even nothing wrong about it, given how politics works. But I think, based on what he has said about Trump, according to these reports, based on reaching out to the Harris campaign, it's pretty cynical. And it's not in line with this RFK Jr. Persona of I'm a truth teller and I'm above politics. Like, give me a break. I mean, come on. He's just as much of a political animal as Republicans and Democrats are. And if you ever believed he wasn't, I think he had fooled. Now, in terms of what this means from a political aspect, I think this definitely will help Trump. And in fact, if you look at the betting odds, they have moved just in the last 24 hours. Trump has gained about 2.5%, according to electionbettingodds.com. Kamala has lost about 2.5%. So they're now basically tied at around 49% each. Why has that happened? When the DNC is going on, and especially last night, I think pretty much everyone agrees, no matter what your political stripes are, that both the Obamas, Michelle and Barack, delivered great speeches. So why would Trump be gaining ground in the betting odds during that second night of the DNC? And I think it's obviously because of this news about RFK. And the reason is, when Biden and Trump was the race, it appeared pretty clear that RFK was helping Trump because Trump did better when RFK was included than he did when it was just a one-on-one matchup with Biden. That was mostly true up until the debate. When the debate happened, up until Biden dropped out. It was especially true after the debate. You had RFK Jr. support spike after the debate. He was getting between 10, 20% in some polls. And what happened was, after Biden dropped out, I think a lot of the kind of Democrats who were like, I just can't bring myself to vote for Joe Biden at 81 years old, about to be 82, given the performance he had in the debate. I think they were parking their support with RFK and maybe some of the other minor independent and third-party candidates like Jill Stein or Cornel West. And what you've seen recently with Harris in the race is that the support for those candidates has dropped dramatically. Like Jill Stein and Cornel West are afterthoughts now. They don't even give even 1% in a lot of polls. But RFK Jr. especially has seen his support crater. I mean, he was averaging around 10% in national polls earlier this year when it was a Trump-Biden race, 10, 11%. That's a big number for a third-party candidate. Now, it's around 4%. And in some of the polls that have come out in the last few days, I've seen him at 2, at 3. So clearly he's trending down. He's lost a lot of the support that he had, which I've always said I thought was soft and would go away as we got closer to the election. I didn't expect it to happen this quickly, but he clearly is trending down. But 2, 3, 4%, which is what he has nationally and in a lot of these swing states, that matters in a close election. And it looks like this election is going to be close. And the biggest indicator that I saw was the Cook political report put out swing state polling. I think it was last week, about 6-7 days ago. And Harris was ahead in, I think, 5 of the 7 swing states and tied in 1. But the key thing was her margin was fairly close in most of those states when it was Harris and Trump one-on-one. But when they did the same polling, same group of people, but now they offer the choice of RFK Jr. and some of the other candidates, but especially RFK, because he gets almost all of that third-party independent vote. Harris's lead opened up. It went from, in most of the states, 2 or 3 points to 4 or 5, which is a huge difference, again, in a close race. And I was just looking today at the Real Clear Politics average in Pennsylvania, which is probably, if it's a close race, the key state. It's hard to imagine either candidate getting to 270 electoral votes without Pennsylvania. It is possible, but it's unlikely. Whoever wins Pennsylvania is probably going to win the election. That state may literally decide it. It may be the decisive state. And in that state, Trump, in the Real Clear Politics average, has a lead of less than 0.5%. It's basically tied when it's Trump, Harris one-on-one. But when you include RFK and you do the race with third-party and independent candidates, which again is almost all RFK, there Harris goes up by about 1.5 to 2 points. So that, again, that's like a 2-point swing. Now, nationally, you don't see that swing as much anymore. In the Real Clear Politics average, Harris's lead is about the same head-to-head with Trump as it is in a larger race. It's about 1.5 or so. But again, in the swing states and in Pennsylvania, where RFK Jr. is getting 4 or 5%, it seems pretty clear from the evidence that what's left of his base is more pro-Trump than pro-Harris. And so if he drops out, and especially if he drops out and then throws his support behind Trump and campaigns for him, that certainly, you would think, would help Trump in the margins in those critical states where the election is likely to be decided. All right, in terms of the DNC, Charlie and I will do a show together Friday where we'll break down Kamala Harris's speech Thursday night and the whole thing. I'll just talk briefly about the first 2 days. The first night was kind of meh, for me. Like, Biden was fine. Some of the other speeches were fine. I thought Raphael Warnock, the senator from Georgia, was really, really good. AOC was pretty good. Hillary was pretty good. But on Tuesday, the stars came to play. And the stars are the Obamas. I mean, Barack Obama, it reminded me, not that I'd forgotten how good he was, but it just reinforced this. Again, put aside whether you agree or disagree with his politics, with his time as president. Just from a speech-making standpoint, which is what these conventions are about, right? There's more to a politician than a speech, a lot more. But with a convention, right, it's about your ability to draw a crowd and to put together a speech. And there is no one in my lifetime that has been better than Barack Obama. I was young, I was a kid when Reagan was in office, and I know he was called the great communicator, and I've seen some of his speeches, and he was really good. But I don't think anybody, and I was born in 79, I don't think anybody has been as good as Barack Obama. I mean, he's one of the best to ever do it. And you saw that in his speech. It was really good. Michelle Obama may have actually been better. I mean, Michelle Obama was more of a kind of red meat, attack Trump, and Barack Obama did some of that too. I thought the crowd size thing was funny when he did the little gesture with his hands about Trump being obsessed with crowd size. But I thought the broader themes of what Barack Obama did were important because, look, elections are about policies, and policies matter, issues matter. And he did a little bit of that, but that will be filled in more by Harris on Thursday night. What he did, I think, was talk more about the theme of the election, what the fight is about, what Democrats and Kamala Harris stand for, what, as he framed it, Donald Trump and Republicans stand for. And I thought he went beyond kind of talking about the slings and arrows of the campaign and talked about kind of broader themes like decency. I mean, he talked about, hey, you may have some people in your life that disagree with you. Your parents or grandparents may say some things that make you cringe. Be patient with them is basically what he said. Talk to them, listen to them, because not everybody is right. Not everyone has all the answers, and maybe you'll learn something, and maybe you'll be able to persuade them. And he talked about how politics and the algorithms of social media are dividing us, and how we need to look past that, and America's yearning to be brought together. Like, I thought some of these larger themes were really effective. Again, policy has its place, attacks have their place. That's, we know that. But sometimes you need someone to step back and give you that broad context. And I thought he did that really, really well. And Michelle Obama did to some degree too. And her speech was kind of a tour de force. I mean, this is why a lot of people said way back earlier this year and last year that the Democrats, if they try to switch, they would switch Biden out for Michelle Obama at the convention. Obviously, that's not going to happen. But you see the political skill that she has. And look, politics is a lot more than delivering a speech. She's not tested in a campaign. I'm not saying that she would be a knockout candidate for sure, but she might be. And that speech was really, really good. Both of the Obamas were. I also thought Doug Emhoff, the second gentleman's speech, was very effective. I mean, he's just a likable guy. Like your dorky kind of guy, older white guy who just comes off as real and authentic. And I thought the families at these conventions, it's always about framing the candidate in a way that makes them seem empathetic, that makes them seem like a real person. And I thought he did that really effectively, talking about his kids and the Mamala thing and how Kamala embraced them as her own, and bringing a personal side to her. Because remember, she's been around for a while. She's a well-known name, obviously, as the vice president. But a lot of people still don't know that much about her. The blanks haven't really been filled in because she has never been the candidate. She didn't go through the primary process. She hasn't had months and months and months to build that up. And it's all happening in a very condensed time frame. And so I thought the Doug Emhoff speech was even more important, much more important, I would say, than a typical spouse speech would be during a convention. So I thought that was effective. Also, the mayor of, I believe it was Mesa, Arizona, who spoke in that network primetime hour, 10 to 11 Eastern. He spoke at the beginning of that. He was one of several Republicans that have already spoken or will be speaking this week in support of Kamala Harris. And I thought what made that effective is he came in from a different angle, which he even said at the beginning, hey, I feel a little uncomfortable here as a Republican. But he said, I feel more uncomfortable in the current Republican Party, and here's why. And he talked about John McCain, who was his hero. He talked about how this is a different party, which is true, that John McCain was the leader of when he was the nominee, way back in 2008, how much the party has changed. And he talked about why it's the Biden-Harris administration has helped communities like his. He said, I represent a conservative community, and I'm going to ribbon cuttings, I'm paraphrasing here, every other week or every other month for projects being built because of the Inflation Reduction Act, because of the Chips and Technology Act, because of the infrastructure bill, things that the Biden-Harris administration got done. So I thought that was a really effective way to appeal to Republicans, not by saying, hey, Trump is this awful, terrible human being, and January 6th, and all of those things, which, may be true, but maybe won't appeal to those kind of voters the Democrats need, which are the Nikki Haley voters, the people who voted in Republican primaries for Nikki Haley, and many of them back then in polling said they were unlikely or wouldn't support Donald Trump. Now, obviously, I'm sure a lot of them have come back to the Republican Party since then, especially with Haley endorsing Trump, but a lot of them are still gettable. And having people like that mayor in Arizona speak about why the Republican Party is different now and why it's okay. It's okay for Republicans, maybe just this time, to vote for the Harris-Walz ticket, I think is effective. Because again, the red meat of political conventions and attacking Trump and January 6th, and those things are important, But a lot of the voters who care about those things are already with you. You need those Haley voters, those people in the margins that are going to decide this election, particularly, like I said, in the swing states like Pennsylvania, those suburban women, the people who aren't hardcore partisans one way or the other. And you need to persuade them with a different argument. And I thought that is what made his speech really effective. And there's more to come. Adam Kinzinger, who was a Republican congressman from Illinois, is going to speak at one of the final two nights of the convention here. He is someone who voted for Trump's impeachment after January 6th and then retired from Congress and now is supporting Kamala Harris. So that's kind of my thoughts on the first two nights. We'll talk more about the convention coming back on Friday when Charlie and I do a full show. Until then, Eric Messersmith, everybody settle down. Make sure you like and subscribe, and I'll talk to you guys later in the week.